Now, I wanted to talk about, everybody in my chat here knows how much I dig the Masque. And years ago, I did some videos just reviewing the books. And then the last thing that DarkHorse came out with that, I Pledge Allegiance to the Masque, which in my opinion is so trash. I did a lot of reviews on each of those issues. I still get comments on those. And the most recent comment I had on one of the original Masque stories from the Mayhem series said in the video that first appearance of the Masque was Mayhem #1, and they're like, actually, the first appearance of the Masque was in DarkHorse Presents #5 by Mark Badger.
Yeah, the same character though.
That's what I said. I wanted to bring that up and show.
Okay, this is the best way to describe it, because I'm not taking anything away from Badger, and I don't feel he would feel that way. He wrote what he did. It's a very heady, esoteric, complex story that I think a lot of people didn't get. And you can see he put a hell of a lot of work into it. But when it kind of faded away, I don't think people were ready for what he was doing there. And Mike Richardson, who owns the Masque, he wanted to relaunch it as something else, a new take on it. And that's what we did. The initial drawing that I had to go through was one by, the design was by Chris Warner. I didn't look at what Badger had done.
Yeah.
But it's not that they didn't even direct me to do that. They didn't say, here, follow what Mark Badger did. It was more along the lines of here's what. So Warner did a couple of drawings. He did the first cover to Mayhem, which is this shouldered massive Masque character that says something like "Who's laughing now?" or something. I think it tipped to Dead 2 or Evil Dead.
Really?
I don't remember. Yeah. So that's what I had. So you could say Chris Warner's of the initial design. However, the Masque took off from there in a lot of directions. And Chris is a fabulous artist. He was one of my favorites at the time. He could draw some thick type structural and action that was just amazing. But he ended up spending more time as an editor at DarkHorse. So yes, you could say the Masque was the original launch, but the Masque it's a unique thing all to its own. So I don't think anyone would deny that.
Yeah, if you go on the Masque Wikipedia here,
yeah,
it does distinguish the two, the Masque first appearance, and then Big Head, which is your
the Big Head Killer.
Yes, yeah.
The Leering Lunatic and the Big Head Killer, and I think we called him a couple other things.
Yeah, never said Big Head at all in the Jim Carrey film.
No.
Well, his head wasn't even that big.
Yeah, much bigger.
Yeah, the comics, it's huge.
Yeah, you recently posted, I don't know if this is all your covers you did, but all the ones
I think we might be missing one. I think one or two. But it's possible that I know there was one that I did for the collection of the collections, and that was Masque holding a bomb pie.
Yeah.
In other words, a whipped cream pie that had a bomb in it. And that's the one piece that I kept. I still have that.
That's a big head.
Well, if you look at the one that was back a couple ones, the one Masque Returns #1. Yep, back one more, or no, the collection. Go back other way. One more. Yep, right there. I was talking to John Arcudi the other day, and he reminded me that I has that cover. And he has this fabulous scan of it. He sent it to me today. It's amazing. So detailed. So I don't know if I don't know if putting it up on Instagram will even come close to showing just how nice to the scan it is. It's so true to the art, but I'll post it, and it just looks like the art. It's just in all of its, you can see the paper texture and everything.
Yeah, so that's so cool. And the fact that you were hand coloring this stuff with dyes is insane.
Yeah, this one was mostly done a combination of dyes, airbrush, and a lot of marker on this one, because I call this my libatory phase from Ransrock, or however you pronounce it. Did you ever see that? You must have.
No.
You've never read that? I'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
He did all of his rendering, I think, with markers in these fails that he painted or he drew. And so when I found out like this was even possible, I took markers and just went to town on that cover. It took me forever, but you could use markers and then the blending tool that you can use. It's not super efficient, but turned it out really good, at least in that cover. So
I love this one, the
I've
glow.
I've used a little variety when it came to doing these things.
Yeah, you bring up airbrushing. We were chatting a couple weeks ago and found out that you had a brief stay in Gurnee,
Well,
Illinois.
not too brief. I did it for 4 years.
Oh man, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
we obviously live in Chicago. Six Flags Great America is our Great America, or our Six Flags,
Right.
excuse me.
Yeah.
And you worked there for I guess, 4 years doing caricatures and airbrushing T-shirts.
Yeah, I went there to begin with. I worked for a company called Fossin Arts. It was contracted for many years to do caricatures and T-shirts. I don't know when they walked out or when the contract was changed, but it was a long time. And I was living in Minneapolis, and I'd moved to Minneapolis from Southern California. I lived in Huntington Beach. My girlfriend and I moved during the winter, and I was actually had been working in machine shops. So I was a tool and die guy. I'd just finished recently, got a certificate, but I'd been working in shops for years.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Minneapolis and I couldn't get a job. Couldn't find any work at that point. And then I was going through the paper long before people did this online. And I saw something that says, hey, do you know how to use an airbrush or something like that? And work for us. And the money's good and all this. And so immediately I called, discovered that you could travel out to Illinois and this thing, which I'd never done before, but I was confident I could. The first thing I did was go get an airbrush and start to learn how to use one. I had an air compressor that was just so massive. You could have run 50 hoses off of it. And it was super loud and it would move itself across the floor and unplug itself. Took it places, when to go visit my grandparents. I took it with me so I could practice then.
Yeah.
So mostly it was like young guys, college age, some girls too. Great way to work for 4 months and to make a sockload of money and go back to school. But I think I spent about 5 months out of the year in Gurnee or Waukegan or nearby. I'm trying to think, there's another Libertyville.
Sure.
And I would lived in these places with just, it was like living in frat houses, I guess. We just, a bunch of us would just, we were terrible. We were awful people to live next to because we're a bunch of artists with money.
Yeah.
And had parties and had a good time. And it's definitely one of the highlights of my life. Met my wife there.
Awesome. Was that before or during your comic work?
I think it was all before.
Wow.
So 4 years into working as a T-shirt and airbrush, I was a terrible caricature artist. I was awful. Because I was so slow. I was painfully slow.
Oh, sure.
T-shirts I could do fast.
That's so cool. But going to malls when I was a kid and seeing and they're not existent anymore, but the airbrush T-shirt pop-ups that are there, I always wanted them. My parents never would buy me one. Sad.
And I'm gonna paint you a T-shirt somehow. The colors are faded. Primarily the cerulean blue is faded, so that's really washes it out quite a bit. That's closer to what it should have looked like.
Oh wow!
I think this is how it looks printed. But then you digitally.
Well, I digitally recolored some of it because I found a nice. First, I started to do it. I was just going to completely digitally recolor it, and which I'd be happy to do because it looked like what you saw, all this washed out. So I got started on it, but then I looked online and I found the really nice clear scans or photos, one or the other, the box set, but it's missing a middle chunk of it because that's the spine, which is, I don't know, it's about 1.5 inches thick maybe, and so there's a missing in the middle. As you can see, I went ahead, filled it in, and then I did some other tweaks.
Yeah, this is awesome.
That's so cool to see. If you guys are not following Doug on Instagram, he's a must follow. All the animations.
The animations are killer.
That's what the animations what drives my interest to be on Instagram anyway. When it comes to my putting stuff up. When I started, it was just an account to basically share with friends online lifting stuff. Then I started going, well, I'll put up some of my art. And I didn't really have any idea that I needed any kind of social presence. I was busy working all the time. But when I started getting to animate, then it really has been fun.